here. It really is. It gave me an opportunity to wear a tie for the first time in 6 months. I mean, it really was refreshing for me. But I can't tell you how humbled we are to be asked to participate in this great effort that you have with millions and millions of masks for our state and give everyone an opportunity to really do their share. I've watched you. I guess I'll be better if I take my earplugs off. I sound better now. I've watched your leadership over the course of this unprecedented, unsettling time we're going through, and I certainly had met you before, but it's just a privilege and honor to watch you lead. I want to thank the Minnesota Chamber, who actually asked us, and Robbie and the whole team. They asked us if we would participate, and in storing these masks until where they got distributed to could be determined. And when we talk about stronger together, we are constantly looking at ways of what can we do? What can we do as a company? What can our employees do? And we tried to do that with food drives and packing backpacks for the students, hopefully, that will be coming back to school, and food for the South Minneapolis community and the whole thing. Our people want to do something, and you just toured our facility. You saw how much of an effort they're putting in, not only to stay safe, but in fact to be here every day making this essential product that without the simple corrugated box, we wouldn't have food, we wouldn't have medical supplies, we wouldn't have anything, because that's what it takes to get that product to market. Our company is over 100 years old. My grandfather, an immigrant, started this company, and he named it Liberty, as you can tell. He was so proud of being an American, and it had been part of our family tradition. His favorite day was tax day, believe it or not. It was his way to pay the debt of gratitude back. And I think that in many ways, as public servants like yourself and other people that serve our community, both locally and statewide and federally, that it's their way to pay their debt of gratitude back to this, and leading in these times that it's hard to determine what to do and what the right thing to do is. You know, I believe in an adage that everything we needed to know we learned in kindergarten. A lot of the other is nice to know, but everything we needed to know we learned in kindergarten. And one of the things we learned at our parents' and grandparents' knee was when you sneeze or cough, you cover your mouth, or you put it into your elbow. If you sneeze into your hand or touch something that's dirty, you wash your hands. And if you have a cold, you stay home or stay away from people. And that's really all this is all about. We are stronger together, and the governor and his staff has worked closely with the business community, not only the Minnesota Chamber, but the Minnesota Business Partnership and others, to understand what it takes to make it work. We have great companies and great organizations that have really proven what Minnesotans are all about. The university certainly has been a great resource in their medical teams. Mayo has been a phenomenal source. The great 3M company headquartered right here and what they've done for this, and so many others, from our plant workers, who in my view are heroes, to the truck drivers that move everybody's merchandise. They're all heroes. They're all heroes. So now, how do we all become heroes? And I think that's what this effort that you're talking about today is all about. Yes, it's cumbersome to wear a mask, especially in warm weather. But I still believe in that adage that sometimes, or all the time, the words of the great John F. Kennedy when he asked us, ask not what your company or your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. Our elected officials can only do so much. They can't put our masks on. They can't force us to socially distance. They can try and regulate that. But I personally believe if our plant workers can wear masks in a hot environment all day long, that it is not a burden on us to ask us to be heroes, to ask us to, at least for the next few months, to wear these masks, to socially distance, so we don't become the issue that's going on in Florida and the issue that's going on in Arizona and wherever else. And that is what this declaration that you decided on, and with the help of others, is saying. We can all be heroes. It is so simple. Just wear a mask. Socially distance. If you don't feel good, get it checked out. And if you're around people and you find out you're testing positive, tell them so they can be tested too. The scientists that are working on the vaccine and whatever, they're working at unprecedented speed. But we've got to hold it off. And that's what you're doing with this effort, and making sure that anybody that will wear a mask, they'll have a mask. So I again compliment you. I compliment the Lieutenant Governor for all the work that she's done in this same effort. It's just an honor to be part of it. We thank you for what you're doing, and I hope you know how much we appreciate and are grateful for who you are as our governor.
Thank you.
Sir, could you please spell your name so we get it right and see my name? To say and spell it so we can get it right. Okay, we're going to look real official with this. Mike Fitterman. You know Mike, Fiterman. And I'm chairman of Liberty Diversified. Thank you, sir.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's pretty obvious why we're at Liberty after you hear Mike speak, and we're with Jack and the Fitterman family. You could hear the humbleness in his voice, but this is nearly 102-year-old company, and as I was saying, you're not around as a family business for 102 years just because you know the bottom line. It's because you believe in your community and you're part of that community. There's a reason that the Chamber of Commerce asked their members if someone would be willing to help with this as we did our mass distribution, and once again, Liberty raised their hands and said, yes, we would be part of that. We are honored to be here. We took a little tour through just to see the amazing factory here, keeping in mind these are folks that are using recycled cardboard, doing it at a Minnesota paper plant up in Becker, using that and crafting boxes for clients all across the country, but here in Minnesota in an efficient manner while creating jobs. And during the COVID-19 situation, talking about more people are buying online and food service and things, that business is actually going up. They've kept their factory running. You go in there and you can see the safety measures that were put in place to make sure that their workers didn't get sick, because it's the right thing to do, but it's also a really smart business tactic because it keeps them functioning. It keeps them working. And the issue around the masks has always been that way. There's going to be a lot of people here to thank. Shannon and Jonathan, our two power chambers joining together. What the Chamber of Commerce understands is that we need to keep our businesses open. We need to keep people employed, and we need things to keep moving forward. And there's some very simple things that we can do, as you heard Mike talk about, washing your hands, keeping socially distanced, stay home if you're sick, and wear a mask. Those things are all meant to keep Minnesota open. Those things are all meant to make sure our children can go back to school. And this initiative, we have Alice Roberts-Davis, who has been part of our team, commissioner, who's been sourcing a lot of this material in a very difficult global environment to get masks, to get gloves, to get face shields, to get all of those things, and then partnering with Deed and Hamza Warf, our deputy commissioner, of making sure that our businesses, if we're going to ask them to ask their customers and Minnesotans to wear a mask, we want to make sure that our goal is to make sure people have the mask to keep themselves and their neighbors safe. And when we go into a business, we don't want somebody to be turned away from a purchase because they don't have a mask. We want to make sure it's easy to get them one. So this is a partnership with our business community. They just told me, Jonathan said 1 million masks have already gone out the door. We got 3 million more to go to source those across the state. But I for one, can tell you, when we come here and we stand with these businesses, everything gets so politically charged. And I just mentioned to Shannon, there is a day with the Chamber that we have many robust debates about tax policy. We have many robust debates about regulation, about the states. That's what makes our country great. Those things are valid discussions. The one thing we don't need to get in discussions about is the science around public health, where we're all in agreement that we can do something together that not only makes businesses thrive, it keeps our public and our people healthy. So I'm just really proud. I recognize recognize, and I want to make sure I acknowledge the Fitterman family. In today's world, anytime you stand out on something, and anytime you take a stand on something that has become so politically charged around the response to COVID, I know that you're taking a risk. I think that description of why you did it certainly should hearten a lot of people, that this isn't about a political ideology, and it's not about trying to make a point other than I think the description about our kindergarten teachers and our parents telling you to cover your mouth when you sneeze and to stay home when you're sick and not get others sick makes really good sense. So this initiative is part of that broader initiative. We really do believe that the numbers support. If we can get 90 to 95% compliance on mask wearing in Minnesota, we can start to get a really, really flattened number and start to drive those COVID numbers down to a point where we're able to do the things we want to do again. So thank you to Liberty. Thank you to the Fitterman family. Thank you to the chambers, and you'll hear from some of them. There's a lot of partners here together. And to our partners at DEED and admin, thanks for making this happen. With that, Lieutenant Governor Flanagan.
Thank you, Governor, and thank you so much to Liberty for having us here today. And I have to say, as you go through and you tour the facility and you see the boxes being put together, and it really reminds me of Mr. Rogers and how a crane was made. It just is all happening, the magic in this building. But some of the magic too is just the real dedication to Minnesotans and to community, and that is so evident here. So thank you so much to the Fittermans for their good work. I just wanted to underline, as we are here, we don't want to talk about handing out tickets. We want to talk about handing out masks. This is not something that has to be punitive. This is a place and space where we all can come together as Minnesotans and simply take care of one another. I think that is the best way that we can express our commitment to community and our commitment to getting a hold of COVID-19. As the governor mentioned, if we are able to increase mask wearing and have the majority of Minnesotans wearing masks, we can really put a dent in this thing. And as we are looking towards our businesses, our schools, and how to just be able to be in community again, that's the way you do it, folks, is you put on a mask. And when we think about how there are particular communities who have been more impacted than others, that's communities of color, the indigenous community, low-income communities, and people who have an underlying health condition, or elders in our community, wearing a mask is simply the way that you can take care of each other. And frankly, I think this is another place, an issue of equity. Having access to these masks and ensuring that we're wearing them is one of the ways that we can have a more equitable response to COVID-19 as well. So I'm just really thrilled to be here as just a reminder to folks to wear those masks, but also to say we're going to make it a lot easier for you to get your hands on one. So there's no excuses. We all can mask up and do this together. And with that, it is my pleasure to introduce to you Jonathan Weinhagen from the Chamber.
He's doubled to get the sweat off your brow. Good afternoon. Thanks you all for being here. Governor Walz, Lieutenant Governor Flanagan, thank you for your leadership throughout this pandemic. Since the very beginning, you've been making tough decisions in partnership and collaboration with the business community, and it's a large part of the reason that this state and this region are where we are today. And what I can tell you is that's not the case for every region. As I talked to my counterparts in Austin and Phoenix and Miami, their case counts are going up. They're facing another round of devastating closures that could be sustained over the course of time. Minnesota's headed in the right direction, which is one of the reasons that we welcomed the mask mandate that went out last week and talked about partnership. So what you're seeing today, Governor, is one Minnesota. We talk about one Minnesota all the time. Across this state, chambers and members of the business community and cities are banding together to distribute masks and make sure that our business community is prepared to keep the economy reopening. Partnership is a part of the culture. It's part of the civic fabric in the state of Minnesota. We didn't need a pandemic to create partnerships. We had a pandemic to activate our partnerships. So when we got a call from DEED and a call from the Department of Administration to distribute 4 million masks, it was a no-brainer for us. It was a little daunting, I will tell you, when I learned that Hennepin County would receive 1.4 million masks. It was 9:30 at night, the commissioner calls up. It happened to be my anniversary. After it kind of sunk in and we had an understanding of the magnitude, and I assessed my garage space and realized that wasn't an option, the Fitterman family was our first call. What I can tell you is, without skipping a beat, no questions asked, Liberty stepped up. Liberty we stepped up and said, whatever we can do, we'll put our team on it. We'll be a distribution point. We want to be a part of the solution. We want to be a part of keeping Minnesota's economy opening. So I'll double and triple my thanks to Liberty on behalf of everybody here today. And it didn't stop there. You're seeing city and municipal community leaders showing up here, picking up stocks of masks, partnering with their local chambers. The second call that I received was from Steve Kramer at the Downtown Council. He said, hey, I know you got this massive mass distribution project. Turns out we're not having an Aquatennial this year as a result of the pandemic, and I've got some of the greatest logistics folks on the planet to help you out. So it's been an all-hands-on-deck approach. I'm really grateful for the partnership. I can tell you, I don't think there's another state that is taking on this kind of an effort, that is preparing and equipping their business community, and that is making sure that we beat this pandemic and we come out stronger than ever before. So thank you, Governor. And we've invited a member of the business community, so Tommy Beavis, who is the owner of Pimento Jamaican Kitchen, a beneficiary of the mask, is going to join us and share a few words. Welcome, Tommy.
Can you spell your name, sir?
Yeah. JONATHAN WEINHAGEN. I'm the president and CEO of the Minneapolis Regional Chamber.
Thank you, sir. We'll just have you start with that.
Tommy Beavis, T-O-M-M-E, last name Beavis, B-E-E-V-A-S.
Thank you, sir.
And thank you so much for having us for this very important moment, this very important mandate, Mr. Governor. And I'm not just coming here as like the jerk master or king of jerk or whatever you're going to call me. I'm coming here as someone with 20 years of experience in community relations, disaster mitigation, and working with communities and governments and corporations to help mitigate issues like the disease we're facing here with COVID. And so at the start of this, a lot of us who've been here before are like, oh, don't worry, this too shall pass. And we were wrong. I was wrong. We've seen the devastation on our communities. We've seen the devastation on our human populations. We've seen the devastation on our economies. And I'm saying to you as a chef, it's time for us to stamp this out. Let's do it. Everything, including the kitchen sink, at solving this once and for all. Now we have no excuse. As we're getting ready to open up Pimento for our partying again, slowly and carefully, we're honoring and recognizing Jamaica's emancipation from slavery and Jamaica's independence from colonialism this weekend. And one thing that we're ensuring that is forefront is safety. We're ensuring that we have masks for everyone, and now no one has any excuses, thanks to you, Mr. Governor. We will have masks to distribute to our guests, to our employees, as well as to our community at large. We have no excuses now. And if you don't want to listen to the governor, take the people of Jamaica as an example. 3 million ungovernable lions and lionesses who love their partying. And they decided they're going to put partying on a pause, wear their masks in the Jamaican heat. And, of course, social distance, wash their hands. And of 3 million people, we've had 10 fatalities in Jamaica. We know that it can be done. If Jamaicans can wear their masks in the heat, if restaurant workers can wear their masks in the restaurant and in the kitchen, we can certainly wear our masks to keep each other safe. All right, so together we can do this. This is within our grasp. All we have to do is grasp for our masks, and we have them now. So come on over. We'll have masks for everyone. No one has any excuses now. One love.
Well done. We'll make sure we put out the address so everybody gets over there. But I want to thank you all, and I do think it's really important. I can't say enough about the business partnerships that have been done, the way the Chamber has worked on this. Charlie Weaver over at the Minnesota Business Partnership, we're working hand in hand. Our goal is the same as the business community's goal, to keep those businesses thriving and to keep their workers and their customers safe. That's how we're trying to formulate this. And there's a lot of things we can do, and a lot of this has been incredibly intrusive, and it's been really hard on these businesses. But the one that's the easiest and probably the most effective is the mask. And that's why we want to make sure we're not mandating without helping them, that we're there to partner with them. And Lieutenant Governor's right. I get it, and I think it's such an American thing to fight and stand your ground and do all that. But I would tell you this, if you really need to do something to express how mad you are, wear your mask and go register to get people to vote against me. At least wear the damn mask. That's at least productive, and you're getting there. If that's what makes you frustrated, that I don't ever want to infringe on somebody's right to speak strongly and to speak about this idea of where personal freedoms are. That is a very core issue of who we are. I just think that we can't get it confused with some of the basic steps we take on public safety, and there's fights to be fought, and there's things that don't make sense to fight. And I would hope on this one we're doing everything we possibly can to make the mask be part of how we get back to normal, so we can have those important discussions around tax policy, around what roads do we look like. So just really grateful, and again, Liberty going above and beyond. It's just such an honor, and I think for me it inspires what's happening is that businesses are working, folks are being paid, jobs are being created, and our goal with the mask mandate is to make sure that continues on. So questions for any of us if you have them.
Mayor Fry has a 3 o'clock news in which he's going to talk about bars and closing, dialing back. You probably heard that. What do you think about either of those?
Well, and one of the things is I think this has been a discussion through this whole thing about local decision-making, local control. I want to be clear, too. I know it's very frustrating when Lake of the Woods got their first case of COVID over the last week. They have been saying or whatever. I do think it's really important, and one of the things we've learned is listening to local officials on that. I think we're going to look at this, and tomorrow we'll talk in depth about schools, about understanding how schools function, how they may look different, how each school is in a slightly different position, and that we make sure that our goals are always about customer safety, and in the case of schools, students and teachers. But in this case, if the city of Minneapolis and their public health department thinks there's a next step they need to take, they will work hand in hand with our Department of Health to get that right. So we'll wait and see on that. I know the Department of Health has been speaking with them. I haven't personally spoken with the mayor or his people, but I think the idea that local leadership, and we saw this on the mask mandate, and again, I want to thank those mayors, chambers of Congress and of Commerce and city council members who issued mask mandates before the state moved. I said, and I still believe this, I think it would be better if we could have done this in a bipartisan manner. I keep hearing that the legislature would rather do these things than have me do them. That's what I asked. I said, could you just do the mask mandate through the legislative process, and they did not. And so I think we'll wait and see what comes out of there. But again, I trust the local health departments to be talking together. The one thing is, I think it's important for the state to have a fairly unified message so that the public understands what's expected of them.
Governor, were these masks easier to source than the N95 that the hospitals are using? Because we're still hearing from nurses that they're running into issues.
No, you're right. And I think this is really interesting. We take a couple minutes, Allison, explain that when we get masks in, we send them to a testing lab. Many of these that come off the market fail. Before we buy them, we don't buy them if they don't meet that. So maybe talk a little about that.
Sure. Good afternoon. I'm Alice Roberts Davis, ALICE-ROBERTS-DAVIS. Commissioner for Administration and currently working on sourcing critical care supplies for the state of Minnesota. The N95 mask is a completely different type of mask. It's actually a respirator mask, and it's used for aerosol generating procedures in a hospital. They're very difficult to come by. This is what's called a simple mask. It's usually 2 or 3 ply, and it will really be a good source control measure for people that is not as intense as an N95 mask that you'd wear in a hospital setting. Much more easy to acquire than the N95.
I noticed on the dashboard that there are still a few million masks that the state is waiting on any news about when those will come and things will be easier for hospitals.
Yes, it's been a while that we've been waiting. Right now what we're waiting on, as the governor said, is making sure that the masks that we purchase have gone through tests for fit and filtration, but also authenticity. And right now we're waiting for papers that show the authenticity of those masks. We have not actually purchased them. We have a purchase order, and as soon as we get that verification, then we'll move forward with the purchase.
Governor, I got another question on the mayor of Minneapolis imposing these new restrictions on bars. Given that the indicators are going in the wrong direction statewide, percent positive is going up, hospitalizations is going up, is that something you're considering statewide, and does that factor in your decision on schools tomorrow?
Well, a lot to unpack out of that. The one thing is it's been our goal from the beginning, and with the business community standing with us, our goal was always to make sure when we opened smartly, we opened in a manner that rolled step by step forward so that we wouldn't have to go backwards. And just to be clear that this changes so much, I think where we were at on June 1st, we were thinking differently about what capacities would look like, maybe larger events. The one thing I would say is that we still believe with where those numbers are, and I should make sure I should have had Commissioner Malcolm with me, that we think what we're going to see out of the mask mandate should start to put a cap on this plateau where we're at. We're going to see that around the 10th of probably August. So if those of you are watching numbers go up, hospitalizations are up, intensive care usage was slightly up today. We had 9 fatalities. Our positivity rate in our testing was at 4.9% today. 5 is kind of that cutoff piece. 3 of our 5 dial back criterias are in the red as of this time, right on that edge. But at this point in time, we've asked the businesses, and I think they've stepped up, that give us an opportunity with this mask mandate, and we think this could give us a position where we don't have to roll backwards and we could start thinking about the next steps forward. So I think, and again, we will do everything in the best interest of public health, but at this point in time, what I'm asking is give us just a little bit of time, and we'll watch these numbers closely. We're not looking at a statewide rollback at this point in time, but we always watch as those numbers move. I would tell Minnesotans we're kind of teetering on that edge. We're certainly not. If you think about this, Miami-Dade County has a positivity rate, I believe, around 27%. So if you want to put it into perspective as a 4.9%. So we're not there yet, but I use the statistic about Arizona. They went from about a 5% positivity rate to 18% in about 2.5 weeks. That's how quickly this can happen. We think that the mask mandate got in at the right time, and then that lets us make some decisions. We'll talk more tomorrow. Certainly community spread and community situation influences schools in how we think about that. But we also have quite a bit of data, and the Mayo Clinic is starting to show this. Schools a little different because of the lower transmission rate amongst children under age 12 makes us look at that a little different, because an elementary school classroom looks different than a bar at midnight somewhere, and that's how we're thinking about it. But no, not at this time, but I encourage Minnesotans to think about this. It's not what the state's going to necessarily do about COVID. It's what you heard these folks talk about. It's what we decide to do about it. And if we can get, and it's showing up everywhere around the world, if we can get 90 to 95% mask compliance, you're almost guaranteed of squashing this thing down to a point where that's not going to be necessary to close things. Yes, Esme. Sure. Can we hold for the off-topic, Esme? We'll come back to it.
Is there one last?
We have a couple of go quickly. Of any of these folks?
So I have one. I mean, maybe John, where are these going? Do people ask for the boxes? How do you know who gets them? Blah, blah, blah.
Good.
Yeah, so we've got great distribution partners. We're responsible for Hennepin County, 45 cities. So we've got distribution sites all over the county in partnership with local cities as well as the local chambers that serve their business community. The city of Minneapolis has been a great partner with a real emphasis on our BIPOC and immigrant communities, making sure that every business across the county receives the supply of masks that they need. And I know that that's the case all across the state, given the great partnerships that exist.
And people are obviously, the business owners are grateful to have these. It's not an expense for them then.
Yeah, this is what we know right now is business owners want to see the economy reopen. They want to stay open. And they want to make sure that they don't have to turn away a single customer, and these masks are going to allow them to do that.
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. And we're trying to get cloth masks out to folks, especially in the BIPOC community, to make sure that folks who have them, no matter what your station is in life, we want to make sure you have the same advantage to get a hold of that mask. And again, I can't stress enough about getting these businesses these masks. I don't want businesses in the business of having YouTube viral videos of arguing with the customer about the mask. I don't want to see us in that situation where we saw down in Marshall folks ignorantly trying to make a statement that cuts so deeply into our communities, especially our Jewish community. It's never our intention to do that. So as I think you heard it, I want our businesses and our police to be handing out masks, not tickets. And I just ask folks, this really is one of those things. There's a lot of things you do to pay for the price of living in a civilized society. You have to drive on the right side of the road in this country. You wear your seatbelt when you come here. You can't use your cell phone. You can't smoke in buildings. Those are all inconveniences if you wanted to do all those, not have to do that. And the masks fall into that same category. So, doing off topic, Esme?
Yes. Governor, there are thousands of people living in Minneapolis and St. Paul who are not
in this, we were just having this discussion inside. Several things can be true at the same time. It can be true that we obviously need reforms, especially in Minneapolis police, but it can also be true that the community wants to know that they're safe in their communities. I think it's important that we look at statistics overall. Any crime is one too many, and when we see an escalation, that's too many. But I think a deliberate attempt to say that crime in the United States is up when we're actually at a 50-year low. We have seen in certain cities, Minneapolis being one of them, where we've seen that rise. And I think what it does is it opens up that broader conversation for all of us. This is not an either-or discussion. And for me, to talk about what the state's role in this is, and you saw it, the states are not in the business of policing. And the mayors and the city councils are elected for a reason. They know they're the state, and many times is there to support them in the needs that they have. I do not want to see a state occupying force policing cities. I don't think it's the right thing, any more than I don't want to see the federal government in Portland or Kansas City. But I think the message that I would tell people is we as a society and we as elected officials owe it to people to make sure that they're safe in their communities, to do the things necessary to make sure that those businesses can operate and people can do that. I have not seen the warning that was coming out of the 3rd Precinct or who put it out. I can tell you it was what? Okay. Yeah, I have not looked at that one yet, and I certainly welcome when people are giving good advice, if that's the case. I think from our perspective, we're watching what's happening in Minneapolis in terms of how they discuss their charter. I think as the state, the one thing I want to be very, very clear of, we've talked about this before, this idea of folks in greater Minnesota making the case that Minneapolis is absolutely unsafe is not healthy in this discussion either. That we need to try and figure out how do we make sure that we keep those numbers as we were on a 50-year trend of reducing crime, but admitting when we're starting to see some issues, how do we address them? So what I can tell you is that Commissioner Harrington, all of us are working along with the Attorney General in how do we assist cities, states, and localities in making sure that we get this right. How do we make sure that people feel safe in their communities? And to be very honest, in Minneapolis, making sure that they feel like the police are on their side to get that right. We've got work to do. I do think the bipartisan legislation we passed started to set the tone. And I would note again, a lot of those negotiations were moved forward with the support of and the help of the business community to try and reach a compromise. So I want to thank you all for being here. We're going to be with you tomorrow to talk about how do we get our kids back into school and take care of our littlest Minnesotans.
Can you say anything in advance of that, just to give a little preview?
Well, I would just say we've had hundreds of hours of time we spent on this. This week alone, I think the Lieutenant Governor and I have been in about 12 hours of meetings. Well, tonight we have a 3-hour session, and we've been working with parents, educators, administrators, the business communities in trying to use the science in the best way possible. I can tell you our guiding principles are to keep our children and our staff in the building safe. And our second goal right behind that is to get our children back in the schools, especially if at all possible. So we're working from the place of public health, best practices, but with the knowledge that our children do best and thrive when they're in relationships in those buildings. And if we can do things to make that possible, I have to tell you, if there's communities across this state that are really, really wanting to see their children back in school and to see them stay there, wear your mask. That is the biggest thing that we can do. Wear your mask. So we'll give you a little more on that tomorrow, and hopefully it'll start to set some guidance. And I just like this one, Jonathan said it, and the Fitterman said it. It's not a cliche that we can all be in this together. And I really think if we could get this point back around a public health initiative, getting our kids back in school, there should be nothing, and there is nothing political about that. It should be based on best practices, best science, and what's best for those children and teachers and staff. And that was what our attempt to do this year is. I was on last night with the governors of Indiana, the governor of Michigan, the governor of Wisconsin, and the governor of Illinois talking about this issue. And I think there's kind of like a misery loves company thing when those governors all get together, because the one thing we talked about is it's unfortunate that we're not getting a whole lot of guidance. None of us are. And that's Republican and Democratic governors on that call together, that each state's kind of on their own. The one thing I can tell Minnesotans is that this commitment to our children in our schools across the state is strong. And I felt as confident coming off that call with the other governors as I could have, that I think we have got the right decision points and the right decision matrix that is going to help school districts make the right decision for their kids. So we'll see you all tomorrow.
Thank you, everyone. I was just going to say, just in answer to your question, though, as we're coming together to talk about how to reopen schools and also keep our kiddos and our teachers safe, I just think it's important that the lens through which we look at these issues, the governor first and foremost is the teacher. And so that is the lens through which he is looking at these issues and making this decision. And I would say, I'm a recovering school board member and the mom of a 7-year-old who's going into 2nd grade, and that is the lens that I'm using. And so that's what Minnesotans can expect when we make our announcement tomorrow. So thank you.
Yeah, good point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Let's get these masks out. You guys did this well.